Hi, I'm Yana.
Hi, I'm Simon.
Welcome back to Rooted in Dirt HQ.
Today we're going to be talking about hybrid athletes.
Hybrid athletes. Are we talking about Hyrox athletes?
No, we're not talking about Hyrox athletes. We are going to be talking about the recent trend we've seen developing certainly in the trail running space, on our news feeds and Instagram feeds and all the podcasts we listen to. Everyone's been talking about all of the trail runners making a transition into road running, and at the same time road runners potentially looking to come into the trail running scene. So we're going to discuss the merits of the debate, whether one can successfully transition between the two or from one to the other and be competitive in either or both environments.
So, an argument we hear a lot is that the elite road runners would come into our sport and they would absolutely wipe the floor with us at our own races. So, what is our stance on this?
It's a nuanced stance, I would say. As you know, if you guys know us, we're not, not looking for clickbait headlines or anything. I think a balanced conversation on this topic is warranted. I think if you took sort of a world-leading marathon runner right now and you threw them into a technical mountainous marathon race, think Golden Trail Series, final or something like that they would not win the race. It's the sports are too different to one another. So I don't think it's an easy answer. I think the nuance is that if the race was not very technical, highly runnable, not a lot of vert, but still off-road and technically classed as a trail run, that there's a possibility. And then I also think the longer you go, the more variables there are. So when we talk about road runners, we are typically talking about the Kipchogis of the world or whatever, who are world class at the marathon distance, but how would they fare at 100 miles, for example? There's a big difference between the two in terms of the skill set that you need, coping with fatigue, coping with vertical elevation gain and loss, and muscle inflammation and nutrition and hydration and kit, and even Kipchoge is not going to be running up Mont Blanc, is he? He's going to need to hike at some point. So can he hike? What's his hiking pedigree like? So there's a lot of nuance to that conversation, and although I think the performance gap is narrower in road running, so road runners are operating close to what I would call a genetic ceiling, like a human performance ceiling. We can talk about why that is later on. So that gap is a lot narrower than it is in trail running. It's still too big of a jump to go straight from road running into trail running. I just don't see it happening. Maybe you can disagree in the comments, but I think it's a step too far. But the caveat again is course depending.
Yeah. So I think listening to you now, it makes me think about the answer that we give to our athletes often when they're asking us open-ended questions also is, it depends.
Yes.
Right?
No one likes that answer.
No, it's not a very satisfying one.
My students also don't like that answer. Like, they're always looking for black and white answers. Yes. And we exist in this world of, I don't want to go on a tangent here, sort of post-truth, the age of disinformation or misinformation, where people just want to take a firm stance on something and just sit in that camp.
Yeah.
And I think every runner at that very highest level that's looking to do that needs to look at that on merit, for that individual person. I think as the race gets shorter, potentially there's more scope because there's fewer variables that come into performance. But yeah, sort of marathon into ultra marathon distance, I just don't see that crossover working. And if you leave it too late as well in your career to make a transition from one to the other, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're missing on all of those foundational base building years that runners who've been in that system have built up. So I just don't think you've got a chance really if you've left it too late.
So you've read a couple of papers on this. Let's dig a little bit deeper into what the research says about this.
Yeah, I haven't read papers on, you know, the merits of the debate, let's say. I've tried to, as I do with trail running research, just stay up to date with what's out there. And two papers that I think add value in this debate are by Frederick Sabatier-Pastor and then Thibaut Besson. And they actually collaborated together. They're sort of part of a working group. And the two papers are, I think, I don't know for sure, but they were published in the same year. I think it was 2023. And they seem to borrow from the same elite groups in the paper. So the one by Besson et al. Was comparing, now I'm going to get it wrong, but I think their one compared sort of recreational and elite trail runners. Okay. That elite sample in their paper was the same as the one in the Sabatier-Pastor paper, where they had elite trail runners and elite road runners compared. Okay, so it doesn't matter which way around you start really, but I actually prefer to start with the comparison of the elites. So that helps set a physical comparison or profile of the two different kinds of runners. Okay, caveats on this paper is that the sample size wasn't particularly big, but I do think they had a relatively well-matched sample. So I think it was either 10 road or 10 trail elites and then 7 road or 7, so 10 and 7. And the road runners needed to be competing for the French national team, and then the trail runners needed to be competing for the French national team trail running at the World Trail Marathon that year. And so in terms of like competitive level, they're quite similar.
Yeah.
And there was some really, you know, probably obvious, if you know your trail running sort of demands, there were some obvious differences between the two groups. The main one being that the trail runners were a lot stronger, more powerful. So they were able to produce more peak torque, so like angular force, through a isokinetic dynamometer. It's like if you've ever seen a biodex, you're sort of sitting in a chair and then you've got to just like put as much resistance into into this pad as possible and flex your knees, and then you've got to do the other way, you've got to extend your knees, and so you can measure the torque. So they were able to produce higher peak torque than the road runners, the road elites. They were also able to produce more peak watts on a stationary bike, so a 6-second test or whatever it is. So they were just more powerful. But the elite trail runners were more economical at higher speeds on a flat gradient, so at 14 kilometers an hour. The road runners were a lot more economical, which makes sense on a flat gradient. At 10 kilometers an hour, interestingly, they were similarly economical, but you got to think 10 k's an hour is very slow for that level of
road runner.
Road. I mean, these are 29-minute 10k runners. And then, interestingly as well, they were similar in economy at a 10% gradient at 10 kilometers an hour, which maybe we can chat about later. But I think that's quite obvious. So there's sort of two camps, you know, the one is stronger, more powerful. The other one is potentially more economical at faster speeds on flat surfaces. And that just speaks to they are adapting to what's in front of them, the demands of their sport, right? But what I found really interesting was that the road runners reported doing, and again, self-reported, could be some error there, but they reported doing 77 hours on average training per month. And the trail runners did just over 40 hours training, 44 hours training per month. So there was an 80% discrepancy. That is a huge discrepancy in training volume, which suggests that if you want to be at the top level of road running performance, you need to train more. And so it goes back to this sort of debate of that performance gap, or how close are we to our genetic ceiling as a human race within the marathon context. I think we're right on that limit.
And understanding the context that trail running is still professionalizing.
Exactly. Trail running is still a new sport. What is what is the definition of trail running? It's off-road more than 80% on trail, but it can be any distance, any amount of vertical elevation, any environment, altitude, extreme weather. Like, we're so far away from any genetic ceiling because no one has yet been like, there are some, who's the Swiss guy that is it Remy Bonnet, the vertical athlete, there's some guys that are maybe like getting specialized in certain
in the VK
competitions,
him in particular.
Yeah, but then you take Kylian Jornet and everyone's like, oh, he's such a rare genetic freak or whatever because he can compete in all of these different levels. But imagine Kylian just specialized in one area.
Yeah,
I mean, he would, if he just chose one thing,
yeah,
like, this is the kind of race I'm doing 100-mile mountainous, that's it. I'm not doing, it's all of a sudden becomes a different debate. So anyway, these road runners are doing way more training volume, which suggests that trail runners could stand to do a lot more volume to try and get closer to that performance ceiling, if you will. But interestingly, the road runners also reported doing more strength training per week or per month than trail runners, and yet they were weaker than trail runners. And again, I think everyone's so worried about, I don't have the right genetics or whatever, and there's this whole sort of nature versus nurture debate, which is maybe something for a different video. But I think that speaks volumes, excuse the pun, about the fact that the training is the thing that is probably resulting in these adaptations, right? So trail runners are getting like free strength training from just running up and down mountains. Lastly, it's just on that Besson paper where they looked at recreational versus elite trail runners. So they had the same elite sample, but they threw in female athletes here as well. So the other one was in French male athletes only, and then this was in trail runners, men and women, sort of relatively equally matched, which was good. And they found very similar sort of things. So the recreational runners were not as strong, not able to produce as much peak torque or wattage as the elite counterparts, and they were also less economical than the elite counterparts. They reported doing, I think it was the recreational athletes doing about 35 hours per month, and the elite was more than 50. I think it was 51 or 52. That's when you bring the women in. So the women elites were actually training more volume than the men. That's why that is inflated in the second study. And again, that just tells you that, if you are capable of doing more training, and that's a whole nother can of worms to open, because you've got to be strong enough to do it, that you're probably going to get those strength training and economy benefits that these elite runners have. So yeah, I mean, I think these studies add a lot to this debate because they speak to the importance of the specificity of your training, and this idea of just being able to toggle in and out between two different sports, I think is, now that maybe I'm going to be a bit, controversial or whatever, but I think it's nonsense. Like, you're not gonna be operating at that 0.01% world leading, standard if you're just trying to dip in and out between the two sports. I think you can be okay. You can be competitive. You can be, maybe on like a national level, your local trail race, local road race, you can be competitive, but you're not going to be Kylian. You're not going to be Eliud Kipchoge. You're not going to be these names, because they are just, training in a much more specific manner than people trying to do hybrid stuff.
Okay, so I think I just want to ask two questions or make one sort of clarifying comment. For the trail runners who heard in what Simon was just saying, that even though the road runners did more strength training, the trail runners were stronger, this is not your permission to not do your strength.
Yeah, skip leg there.
Just because you are ascending steep gradients, which is making your body strong, please, for injury mitigation, prevention reasons, continue to do your strength. And then I just wanted to sort of confirm with you. So we think that the specialists will perform, or rather the specialists rather than the crossovers will be holding future records.
Yeah, I think future records. I don't know how long. Like I haven't thought about the debate around timelines on this really, but as you mentioned, the sport of trail running is becoming more professional. We have professional runners now in our sport. That's fantastic. It used to be a thing of you were a nurse and a professional, you were a barista and a professional trail runner sort of thing. Like you hear these stories and it's like,
it's not yet an Olympic sport.
Yeah, and that brings another debate. People are so trail running shouldn't be an Olympic sport. It's like, make it an Olympic sport. That's just my opinion. But we're not in that professionalized space yet. And so when that happens, when I had a conversation with people at UK Athletics around developing a talent identification system model for trail running and trail runners and ultra runners. Like, how do we, when you've got a young child who is interested in running, are we able to detect early enough that this is a kind of runner who's going to be better suited for trail running than road running? And even if they were at this point, even if they were better suited for trail running, are they actually going to pursue that if they know that in road running there's a better structure in place where they can potentially earn a livelihood or a good income? I think at this point they probably try and pursue that first, and that's the thing that we're seeing. Like these road runners that they're not world leading, they're sort of 208 to 212 men or something like that, and then we're thinking, okay, well maybe they can transition into trail as if it's like a backup option. We don't want trail running to be a backup option. So I think this debate around specialists is, yes, absolutely, specialists will have all the world records at your favorite local race, your Western States or your UTMB, but only when that environment allows for it. I mean, they currently do hold, specialists currently do hold the records. I think there could be a risk that some sort of hybrid crossover athletes come in and push that needle and get close. Like I said, I don't think it's really realistic because there's not much of an incentive for them right now.
Yeah.
But if that incentive grows, but then yes, eventually your specialists that start off from a young age, the guys coming from track, how I see it is like sort of track, middle distance, young kids, middle distance track, going into your longer stuff, your 5,000s, your 10,000s. Then they go into half marathons and marathons and they dominate, blah, blah, blah. That's the natural trajectory to develop that speed and that economy profile. And then what I'd love to see is like, youngsters that are in cross country, for example, where, you need to be able to produce a little bit more force for each stride because of the duty factor and, these soft sort of rolling hills and soft ground and stuff like that. And then if we're able to identify through talent identification, okay, can we start exposing them to steep uphills, to hiking, to get those kinds of skills? And then those are the athletes of the future that will hold the records.
And hopefully as trail running professionalizes, those athletes won't just be incentivized in terms of what they might win or receive by winning a race, but also actually just have the overall support, the sports psychologists, the nutritionists, that whole team, because that is also currently something that is still developing within the sport of trail running.
Yeah.
So let's make this practical for the listeners who are still with us. Let's start with the road runners. So for the road runners who are listening, what are some of the practical key takeaways that we can share with them?
Stay out of our sport. No, I'm kidding. We want everyone to be trail runners. I think that's our ethos is, trail is best. It's just a fantastic way to connect with, the world outside and around you, and reconnect with sort of a distant, ancestral past, let's say. So trail running is a fantastic sport, fantastic community. We'd love more people to try trail running. I think if you are considering transitioning into trail running, the practical takeaway is that you're not going to have that force profile yet, that ability to, climb steep sections of courses well, and descend quickly, which require concentric and eccentric strength in equal measures. So don't get frustrated. Like you hear a lot of like trail runners come in, they're like, road runners come in, oh, I didn't know it was this hard, and this kind of thing. And it's like, it's not that hard. In fact, I find trail running easier because of the variability. You get these moments in a race where you can sort of take a moment to compose yourself and then sort of go again. So it's not that it's harder, but you're going to take a while to develop that strength. So go to the gym, develop your strength, go and do some hiking, practice your downhill running, uphill running, and you will get it. It's just going to take some time. And practice your technical skills as well. It's all good and well getting out on like a dirt track or doing your hills on the road or whatever. You actually need to get on into the mountains, preferably.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think when it comes to technical terrain and going down a mountain that's steep, it's also the mental, the confidence that you need to build in getting down quickly and safely.
Yeah, for sure.
And what about the trail runners who are listening, who would like to dabble?
Don't go to the dark side. Speaking as someone who loves to dabble in a little bit of road, go for it. Would be my advice. Like, again, I think in trail running, we still need an aerobic base. We still need to be economical. There's value in building out that engine, and sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes it's easier just to get out on the road, so you can incorporate that into your routine to accumulate volume. Be careful when you transitioning into road, because it's a lot more sort of the rhythmic nature of running is a lot more consistent, and the surface is a lot less forgiving, and so you might run into some sort of repetitive overuse type injury. So just be careful. But definitely you can use road running blocks to develop these parts of your armory that are maybe missing. In both of these cases, plan your when you do your transition well within your season. So you don't want to be, if you're a trail runner preparing for a trail race, you don't want to be doing your road running foray in the weeks leading up to your trail race. You want to do it in your off season, or in your base phase or whatever, and then as you get closer to the race, you build in your more specific training, and vice versa. But yeah, I would say there's a lot of value. You can develop your speed, hip turnover, your economy, clearly. So there's value there. But yeah, just try and find that balance, I guess.
Yeah. And for those trail runners who are listening, who want to dabble in road or don't want to dabble in road, you don't have to wait to become a road runner to do your speed and to go to a track for the first time. So that is, I think, also a misconception that a lot of trail runners have. They don't love speed work. They want to go and explore.
Yeah.
But if you want to get faster, if performance is important to you, then go and familiarize yourself with the track. It'll do you some good.
Yeah, and there's no judgment, guys. Like, again, if you are considering trying or sampling from one of the other sports, it's good. It's good to try new things, and I think just will improve you as a general runner. So for your average runner, by all means, have at it.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts?
No, I think hopefully we've covered everything, and a little bit of science thrown in there. If you have any ideas on how to transition effectively, if you have any questions, maybe you've got some experience navigating both, maybe you're in the 0.01% and you're watching this right now and you're thinking of transitioning over, give us a shout and we'll be happy to help. But yeah, thank you, to our listeners, and please do like and subscribe to our channel so you can be notified of the next video.
Awesome. Thank you. Until next time.
Bye.